Welcome to the 2020 Chapter Leaders Discussion at the AHRMM20 Conference. My name is Kimberly Green, and I am the AHRMM Member Engagement Specialist here at AHRMM. I'm also the Chapter Relations Committee Staff Liaison. Thank you again for spending some time with us this morning. I'm just going to go over some housekeeping notes quickly as we begin. All lines have been placed in a listen-only mode. When we invite you to join the conversation after the presentation today, you can join in two ways. The first way is to type your question in the Q&A box, which can be found by clicking on the Q&A icon in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Make sure that you are sharing with everyone in the drop-down so that we can all see your discussion and your questions. We are going to, So we are going to ask the question out loud, and then it will be answered verbally since we are recording this event. And then second way you can participate is you can raise your hand and verbally share your question. And in order to raise your hand, open the participant module by clicking the person icon at the bottom right side of your screen. Once the module is open, click on the hand icon at the bottom of the panel to raise your hand. You'll be prompted verbally before your line is unmuted, so please be prepared to speak at this time. After you have asked your question, you can lower your hand by clicking the hand icon, and we'll leave you unmuted during that time if you have any follow-up questions, and then we'll mute you back. So here are some information that we just shared with our board and our chapters regarding our affiliation recognition program for all of our chapters this year for 2020. We are excited to announce and recognize our affiliated chapters that have achieved diamond, gold, silver, bronze, and standard status this year. We'd also like to recognize a newly affiliated AHRMM chapter. And if you've registered for AHRMM20 Plus, we have a presentation in the resources section on the virtual platform, so you can view these chapters and their status recognition online in our chapter resource center at ahrmm.org as well. So congratulations to our diamond chapters: Arizona Healthcare Materials Management Association, California Association of Healthcare Purchasing and Materials Managers, Healthcare Materials Management Society of New Jersey, Kansas Association for Healthcare Resource and Materials Management, Mid-Atlantic Society of Healthcare Materials Management, Minnesota Chapter of AHRMM, North Texas Association for Healthcare Resource and Materials Management, South Carolina Society of Hospital Materials Management, Western States Healthcare Material Management Association. And congratulations to our gold status chapters: Florida Chapter of AHRMM, Georgia Society for Healthcare Materials Management, New England Society for Healthcare Materials Management, Rocky Mountain Chapter of AHRMM, CPAC Inc. Congratulations to our silver chapters: Mississippi Hospital Association Society for Supply Chain Management and Healthcare, Tennessee Association for Healthcare Resource and Materials Management. And also congratulations to our bronze chapters: Michigan Association for Healthcare Resource and Materials Management, Missouri Association of Healthcare Purchasing and Materials Management, Society for Arkansas Healthcare Purchasing and Materials Management, Texas Gulf Coast Supply Chain, and Wisconsin Healthcare Purchasing and Materials Management Association. We also would like to recognize our standard affiliated chapters: Chicago Metro Chapter of AHRMM, Greater Ohio Chapter of AHRMM, Greater San Antonio Healthcare Resource and Materials Management Chapter, Indiana Healthcare Supply Chain Association, Northern Plains Association of Healthcare Materials Management, Virginia Association for Healthcare Resource and Materials Management. And congratulations to our new chapter that affiliated just this year in May, and their president is Ryan Burke, just out of New York. So congratulations to them, Healthcare Supply Chain Association of Upstate New York. And now I would like to introduce you to Jason Isherwood. He is our 2020 Chapter Relations Committee Chair. Go ahead, Jason.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to take the time to thank everyone for taking the time to sign in and join our chapter leader discussion. Prior to starting, I wanted to take a moment to recognize the Chapter Relations Committee and give you a short intro on how we got to today's topic. That being said, I wanted to quickly thank the following individuals for their commitment over this past year so far. And that would be Joel Appleberry, Mr. Tim Bugg, Ashley Brown, Susie Collins, Rick Goodhue, William Keller, Mr. Rick Laird, Patrick LaPlante, Roger Mattis, Tracy Mosley, George Pearson, Tracy Raymond, Randy Powell, Corey Schmidt, Paulette Simmons, Heidi Sweeney, and Michelle Tracy. Thank you all for taking time out of your schedules to not only join our monthly committee calls, but also ensuring you're continually checking in with your assigned chapters. So I appreciate all your hard work and all your dedication. That being said, as we came into this year, our committee was mapping out a few key initiatives we wanted to drive forward to help support local chapters. But as it's been said, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, and that couldn't be more true for how the year's unfolded thus far. Our committee, like most, hit the pause button on our monthly meetings, as most of our members, as you can see, were head deep in the current pandemic. We also noticed that most, if not all, chapters did the exact same thing. We decided to start meeting again in June, and the one thing that was an obvious obstacle is how do chapters stay relevant in this current environment? So our committee scrapped our original plan, pivoted, and started to seek those chapters or chapter leaders that were experimenting on what was next. There was one chapter that was constantly on our radar, and that was NESHMM, which is the New England chapter. I'm lucky enough over the years to be able to attend a lot of different chapter events across the country, and to include NESHMM. I will say their engagement from their members and their leadership, not only current and over the years, definitely has the special sauce. And what better way to learn but to have our peers share their ideas with us? I'm definitely one for not being ashamed of stealing a good idea. My committee's hope for today's session is you will all walk away with something tangible, or in simpler terms, a how-to guide on how to move forward, providing the education and networking opportunities locally in this new normal. My committee also challenges you all to not wait. Start experimenting with virtual chapter events. It would be great to see most chapters holding an event virtually by the end of the year. Thank you for all you guys do. Thank you to Craig Dudley, the president of NESHMM, and the whole NESHMM team for the forthcoming presentation. And I will turn this over to Mr. Craig Dudley.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that warm welcome and the terms of congratulations to the NESHMM team. We really appreciate that. We think for this year, 2020, we've really worked hard in terms of trying to use your word, stay connected. So welcome all of the chapters to AHRMM20+ Healthcare Supply Chain Conference. We are happy to have you here and are happy to be presenting our presentation, connecting with membership during the pandemic, COVID 2020, NESHMM. New England Society of Healthcare and Materials Management. Next slide, please. The presenters today, along with myself, are all members of the NESHMM Education Committee team. Some bright individuals who all have day jobs and share their time and effort to make our organization one of the best, I believe. I'll first introduce who I am and just a little bit about myself. My name is Craig Dudley. I'm the Director of Materials Management for Lawrence General Hospital in Lawrence, Massachusetts. We also have presenting today our Education Committee Chair, Susan Wills, and she is the Director of Strategic Sourcing and Contracts at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. We have Gennady Bazaroff. He's the Manager of Business Systems and Analytics at Boston Children's Hospital. And rounding out the team that will present today is Jennifer Dunn, and she is the Key Account Manager for Nixon Medical. These individuals all work and sit with our education team, and they are part of the sub-team. I'd also like to just quickly mention our current president in waiting. That's Eric Berger, who is the Vice President of Supply Chain at Leahy Health. And again, he's our president in waiting. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our president past, Chris Johnson, who is the Senior Vice President of Supply Chain for WellForce, or sort of the leadership connectivity, and I say connectivity tissue that helps continue to move NESHMM forward. The next slide, please. Who are we? NESHMM mission is to provide healthcare and materials management professionals with timely education on industry best practices and encourage peer networking, as well as sponsor forums for exchange of useful information. We have a total of 550 NESHMM members. That rounds out to about 200 or so or better materials management folk, as well as about 352 vendors. Our territory, as you can see, stretches from Connecticut all the way up to Maine. So there's a significant land and territory geographically to cover. So we try to do the best we can by bringing individuals from these states into the fold and working with them and sharing information and content and education. Boston, or I should say Massachusetts, is sort of the middle point where we do a lot of our meeting, education, face-to-face stuff, events. So that allows opportunity for individuals to meet somewhere in the middle there and again, work together, develop synergies, you name it, in terms of our membership and staff. The next slide, please. I'd like to just briefly, before going into the subcommittee, just talk a little bit about that, what we do and what we've been able to bring to bear. So NESHMM normally puts on about 4 to 5 events a year. And that first event is our annual networking event, and it's normally held out at Foxborough Stadium. And this is always an exciting and a well-attended event, especially since the Patriots are always coming off a Super Bowl win, and our New Englanders love an opportunity to get close to the beloved Pats. So we hold an event there, an annual networking event, and it's well-attended. We raise a lot of money. We have a great time networking and communicating and talking and touching base with our membership there. Secondly, after winter thaws out on this end, we sprint to our New England annual golf event, which is another huge event that draws huge participation from our membership, materials managers, vendors, manufacturers, etc. One of our great events, and again, it allows us an opportunity to grow some revenue in terms of our organization, as well as develop a networking and relationship presence, connectivity presence with each other. Thirdly, we put on a spring education session which we include synergy with a local college in the area, which has been a tremendous add and a plus for NESHMM. Stonehill College and our affiliation with that college and its leadership and students allows us an opportunity to reach back, become mentors in a sense to some of the students, and allow the students an opportunity to gain exposure to NESHMM, the materials management profession, as well as contacts in the vendor and manufacturing supply space. So that sort of synergy we've been able to develop with the college has been great for us in terms of a pipeline to our organization as well as to industry throughout Massachusetts and the NESHMM geography. And lastly, our annual dinner and reverse vendor fair, which I think is one of the best events, bar none, next to one of the huge AHRMM events. This is always well attended each year. We bring in a national speaker to address our membership, and we talk about whatever the pressing topics are for the day, as well as items that are motivational for individuals to take something from. So that's always a great and well-attended event. There's a reverse auction, so we allow our membership materials managers an opportunity to round, chat with, talk with, touch, see, feel products that our vendors have to offer. So it's a great opportunity, again, to bring materials management folk in the room and in the presence of our vendors and our manufacturers, who are both very, very important to what we do. And then the fun begins, because we have an annual dinner each year, and that dinner allows us to have a little fun, let our hair down, have a great meal with cocktails with our membership, contacts, develop synergies, etc. So it's always a great opportunity for our team, our membership to get together. And during that time, we award our vendor of the year. We award our supplier of the year, our materials management person of the year. Again, so it's just always a fun time to recognize excellence amongst our membership. And as well, we have huge drawings. So you never know what you'll be able to win during the drawing of the evening. So again, great opportunity, several events that we pull together each year. And our education committee is very, very involved in doing that and pulling these things together. So I wanted to just recognize them. And Susan Wills, who I'll throw the microphone to, will sort of walk through our education committee and those important people who pull these events together each year. Susan?
Thank you so much to AHRMM and to Jason and the Chapter Leadership Committee for inviting us to come and share our experience today. I want to take a moment to give a shout out to my education committee. We have an amazing group, and I couldn't do, and our board couldn't do what we do without this group of individuals. They all have individual strengths. We have very seasoned members, and we also have some Gen X. They all contribute in many ways, suggesting ideas, networking, volunteering to be part of presentations, doing outreach for membership participation in our events, and participation in all meetings. And I think this group represents the diversity of our membership. So I'm going to share with you now how we got started re-engaging after COVID hit. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we had two events tentatively scheduled for April and June. We were working on an education event, partnering with Stonehill College, as Craig talked about, for an event in April, and we had our golf tournament scheduled in June. So, you know, we were all in the same place you were, just trying to figure out what was going on. Our education team continued to meet twice a month, and I think we decided at that time to just kind of take a wait and watch approach. Then things started to get really scary. And the governor's mandate came out in Massachusetts in March, basically saying stay home. And I think it was at that point we decided we needed to cancel our events. Next slide. So what do we do now? You know, during that time, we received an email from one of our members and asked what NESHMM was going to do to start bringing the members together and making the suggestion that we start connecting on our individual COVID PPE experiences and maybe doing some sharing of resources. There was some of that going on out there. I know Vizient was doing some. They set up a forum by which Vizient members could share PPE product amongst each other, and I actually participated in one of those swaps. So could we do something like that? So on our calls now, we started to talk about, well, what do these events look like? They weren't going to be in person, so we needed a technology. A couple of us were using Zoom. Gennady and I were both using Zoom and thinking maybe we could make that be our forum. You know, our typical length of events were a half day. We had a couple of presenters that presented for an hour each. And, you know, now we're having people sit at a computer and watch an event. And we knew it wasn't going to be a 4 or 5 hour presentation. So we had to think about that. So what types of events would we have? You know, would they be strictly education? Could we do some, you know, kind of informal networking? So we're just kicking around a lot of ideas. And then finally we did an outreach to membership to say, hey, we're thinking about scheduling some education events. You know, what would you like to hear? I think we put a couple of feelers out there. We're thinking about doing something around pandemic. And actually we got a lot of input or feedback from the membership saying, yes, move forward with the pandemic. Sounds like a great idea. And we also asked them for participation, saying, hey, do you have something you want to personally present on? Would you be willing to present to the membership? Most of the feedback I got from them was from salespeople. And salespeople had things they wanted to talk about, products that they were selling to support, you know, providers during the pandemic, and also, you know, products that they sold to customers who they partnered with in helping during this pandemic process. So, you know, we were thinking about, is that an appropriate thing to share with our membership? You know, most of our members, more than half of our members are suppliers. And we needed to find the new normal. What was that going to look like? Next slide, please. So this is the new normal for our team. Our education team meetings are now held via Zoom. And just sharing with you a sample of one of our Zoom invites. Next slide, please. So we wanted to start talking about what could we present that would be appealing to the membership. I was pretty adamant that we needed to talk about the hot topic, and that was the pandemic, what was going on. You know, we were all struggling to source PPE, resource sharing. You know, with the PPE, we were all forced to use suppliers we didn't typically use. Our supplies were being, you know, held at customs. Our supplies were getting confiscated. I don't know if that's the right word, but getting confiscated by the federal government. And there was a lot going on. All of our senior executives were just coming down on supply chain, like, you need to get us these supplies. And I got to say, the first 4 weeks were 4 of the worst weeks of my career, and I've been doing this a very long time. So we also thought about, we wanted to get input from providers, from suppliers, GPOs, manufacturers, and helping all of us to understand the new global supply chain. So we also talked about member presentations, and, you know, sometimes it's really hard to get members to participate, but we thought this might be a good forum for first-time presenters they don't have to stand up in front of a room full of people. It might be an easier forum for them to present. Maybe they could talk about something going on related to the pandemic in their organization. And we also thought about maybe doing a networking event, but maybe starting with a TED Talk just to get people talking. And then we kind of kicked around, if we get all these suppliers, they're not able to call on hospitals at this point in time. Maybe we give them a forum by which they can sell products to the membership. Okay, next slide, please. So we decided our first events would be traditional education sessions, but modified. We started with the supplier perspective on pandemic, and we actually wanted to get kind of those hot suppliers, those hot manufacturers. And you know who they are. They were 3M, they were PDI, right? The N95s and the Sandy wipes. We were all dealing with, shortages. I still don't have any extra N95s beyond my allotment. I just haven't been able to do it. But I was able to get 3M, 3M, PDI, we got Premier, we got Vizient, and we got Claflin Medical, who is a local distributor here in New England. And we also set up a second session on the provider perspective on pandemic, and we did a reach out to volunteers for the provider event. And we actually got a great group of presenters for that event. The other events we started setting up were kind of informal. We wanted to provide a forum of just networking, which was initially asked for. So we thought about maybe doing a happy hour. So we did one happy hour, and yes, we got all the party people, and it was fun. Limited attendance, we might have had 25 people, but it was lacking meaningful conversation. We just kind of chit-chatted about what was going on in our organizations, but a lot of it was us, the committee, asking, what else is going on. And then we decided to do a monthly event called NESHMM Networking. I thought maybe we shouldn't call it happy hour because it might scare away some people who don't indulge. And that's not what it was about. We had similar attendance on the first couple of NESHMM networking events as a happy hour, about 25 or 30 people. And again, we had to keep asking, so what else is going on? On the second NESHMM networking session, though, we invited a couple of suppliers to do short 15-minute presentations. And, I think that went over well, and we may do more of that. We had a little hiccup with that one in that our Zoom links got mixed up, and Gennady and Jen are going to talk to you about, those invitations. And if you send out an invite and then decide to change it and send out a different invite, you need to remember to cancel the initial invite. And we had some hiccups with that, but we're learning. Next slide, please. So ways to connect and continue to engage. We're going to continue doing the education events. The more formal education event we had, the first one we had 197 people register, participate, and there were pretty much close to 196 people when the session ended. Our evals came back really good. For the provider event, we had about the same amount of people registered, but again, we had another hiccup with the link, and many people missed it. They were on a different link, I'm embarrassed to say, but it happened. We're learning. So we're going to keep doing more of those. We're in the process of planning our next educational event at this time. We're going to keep doing the networking, the more informal opportunities where people can do mini presentations. What we feel like we need to do is to kind of get people started on the conversation. So mini presentations for engagement, planting questions in the audience to get the conversation started, doing TED Talks, and finally, we'd still love to get those first-time presenters. We want to keep doing the happy hour here and there, just keep it totally informal and just let people, talk about what's going on, and hopefully we'll get feedback on further events, what to offer. Sales events, like I said, we're considering doing events dedicated to salespeople who want to promote their wares. Our continued challenges are consistent attendance. Part of this is our fault because we mismanaged the links, but I think for the most part, we've been very happy with the attendance. Member participation, as I said, we want to keep them engaged and keep them coming back. And then engagement from the members during the events. We want to encourage, we don't want to have to keep asking, so what else is going on? We want there to be an active and productive conversations. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jen Dunn. Jen is a critical component to making all of this work. She's in charge of our communication. There's a lot to it, and she does an amazing job. Jen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Dunn, Key Account Manager at NESHMM Medical and the Membership and Communications Board Member for NESHMM. So about a year ago, NESHMM came to me that I would be interested in developing and managing their new website using a new platform they purchased. Of course, I said yes. It's a new challenge that I was able to bring on, and I've been managing it ever since. With the current environment, I had to learn very quickly. So there are a lot of different components that went into the communication piece of our virtual education sessions. We used a variety of programs, including but not limited to Wild Apricot, LinkedIn, SurveyMonkey, and Microsoft Outlook. I'll be going through how we used each of these applications and how crucial they were to the success of our virtual education sessions. So if you could please go to the next slide. So we're going to start with the Wild Apricot. What is Wild Apricot? Wild Apricot is the website platform we use, which was actually recommended to us by the CPAC chapter. Wild Apricot is a cloud-based all-in-one membership management software. It's affordable and super easy to use. You just have to learn how to do it. The software enables us to manage our membership, manage our website, events, and more, all through just a browser. So membership database. Wild Apricot holds our entire membership database and allows us to renew existing members and register new members. It also allows us to push invoices and manage our financials. Yes, I'm the one to bug our members to pay their dues, but our members are really good with their payments, so I don't have to do that often. Events. So all of our events are created through Wild Apricot. With Wild Apricot, we're able to send out our first announcements and reminders of upcoming events. We can also add events to the website event calendar and send registration forms, which is actually just a click of a button to our members. I'm going to show you some screenshots of what these look like in the following slides. But so website management. As I said earlier, I manage our website. After every single event that we post content such as images, PowerPoints from the presenters, and we also record every virtual education event. So members who might not have been able to make the event are able to view and access the session on the website. Job postings. So our members frequently reach out to us within the organizations that they work for and ask us to post jobs on the website, which we do pretty frequently. And then every inquiry from the website, whether that's events, emails, everything gets directed and routed towards me. And lastly, for those of you who are on the go, which are most of us, I assume, you're able to access our website from your mobile device, and it looks really fancy. So you'll see the picture right there. That's a picture of our homepage. I will include a link to our website if you're interested in viewing it after the presentation. It took a little bit of learning, but it was definitely worth it at the end. And we're always updating it as well. Always, always. All right, you can switch to the next slide. All right. So this is our event creation. So this is a screenshot of the admin view when creating an event. So this is not visible to members, but with this tool, you're able to add information about the event, including the title, event URL, which actually directs the member right to the event calendar on the website. It's a pretty cool feature. You can also add the location, which is usually where we add the Zoom meeting link and or dial-in. Of course, you can set the date and time and the description of the event. So this is all internal until you click that little allow registration button right up there. As soon as that is clicked, that immediately gets put on the events calendar on our website. So it's literally just a click of a button. It takes 2 seconds to kind of get all this ready to go, and members are able to go onto the website and see that. All right, you can go on to the next slide. All right, here's a screenshot of what our members see when they click on the events tab on the website. So members are able to register for events here. If you can see on the left-hand side, I've already registered, of course. I do attend every event. But they're also, when we send out the emails, which we'll go over in the next slide, they're also able to register there. So something really neat I discovered, which actually wasn't too long ago, is that the member can add this to their Outlook, Google, or whatever calendar they use on a day-to-day basis with just a click of a button. If you see that little add to my calendar little tab up there, you can immediately add it so it's in there. Of course, we know that most people won't do that, so we do send out another additional calendar invite just so they have it. But this is really useful for us, and our members frequently go to this page. All right, you can go to the next slide. Event emails. Now, this is a really cool feature. So with every event that we schedule, we send out a series of emails. The first being the announcement where the members can RSVP to the upcoming event. Of course, like I just said, it's just a click of a button and they're immediately registered. And the second is being a reminder email closer to the event. So you have the ability to either schedule the emails to be sent out right that second, or you can schedule for them to be sent in the future. So usually what I'll do is when I put the event on the website, I'll go here and I'll send out the first announcement immediately, and then I will take the first reminder, I will customize it. I customize all these all the time, every single time we plan an event. But I'll take that the first reminder and I'll schedule it for, usually it's 1 week prior to the event, so people can get that little push reminder to put it on their calendars and make sure they're free. So I'm also copied on every single registration. If someone does register, I can see that. I have a separate folder for that because that's a lot of registrations. But yeah, so it's very helpful. And of course, there's a registration confirmation email that we do blast out as well. So announcement number one, if you can see down below, announcement number one, June 29, 2020, we sent out that first announcement to 596 members. The reminder number one on July 13th was sent out to 105 members. That means these members who didn't respond, you can see that we've got a lot of responses. So this is these 105 members are the only ones that did not respond. So that's a pretty good turnout. All right, you can go to the next slide. So this is another internal admin view. This is the RSVP page. So not only can you see the individual RSVP, like myself right here, you can also see the total number of invitations that were sent out and how many people RSVP'd. This helps us a lot with determining how many members will attend the session. I didn't add a slide for this next part, but along with every event, like I mentioned earlier, we create and send out a Microsoft Outlook invitation with a Zoom link attached to ensure it gets on our members' calendars so they don't have an excuse not to come. So this is definitely one of the most important components of planning an event, just to get it on the calendar. All right, and you can go to the next slide. Thank you. LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is kind of new for us since the onset of the pandemic. We post every single upcoming event. As you guys can probably tell, we do a lot behind the scenes with posting events. So this is just another platform that we use Since social media nowadays is heavily used, we found that being active on LinkedIn is really important. LinkedIn helps keep our members up to date with upcoming events, and it also helps with outreach to grow our membership. I know you can probably see there, we only have 22 members. Again, we're new to this, but I mean, everyone's connected with someone who might be interested in joining NESHMM, so it's only a matter of time until we have 1 million members. All right, go ahead to the next slide. All right, so after this, this is my last technology piece of the presentation, if you haven't already gotten enough. So after every event, we ask our members to participate in a survey for feedback. Now, the questions we ask typically are on the left-hand side, if you can see there. They're kind of small, so after the presentation, you'll be able to view this because I just saw in the notes that everybody wants to have the PowerPoint sent out. So those are some of the questions we ask our members. And you can view individual responses, or you can look at group responses shown in that middle picture right there. And you can look at the trends. So 31 people answered, and most of them said the presentation was excellent, and only 2 said it was good. So that's a good turnout for us. The last picture on the right is one of the most important questions. We want our members to give us feedback and recommendations of topics they'd like to discuss and hear and learn about. So this helps us, queue up our future events, and we can line them up because our members have great ideas. Collaborating as a team is really important in this, and we've been getting really good feedback from our members, and it really helps us with growing our education piece. So that is all for me, folks. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions following the presentation about Wild Apricot, anything that I presented, please don't hesitate to reach out. But next up, we have Gennady. All right, Gennady, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jen. So, I mean, as my colleagues were going through their individual parts, I just want to take a step back and give them all a pat on the back. Every time I hear about all these things that we're doing individually and then collaboratively, it's just so impressive. And it just speaks to the fact, going back to the title of this presentation, that in order to keep the membership engaged, we have to be engaged, right? It all starts with the Education Committee and the board and the leadership of the organization. So just really impressive. So I want to talk about the technology portion of it. A lot of what piggybacks off of what Jen said. And, the platforms, not all of them, but a lot of the platforms that we use, LinkedIn, SurveyMonkey, having a website, those sorts of things, they're not new. People use them for all sorts of different things. And, LinkedIn has been around for a long time, and SurveyMonkey and all these things. But it's how they're used. We all use them, the platforms, but the difference is how they're used to keep our membership community engaged. How often, which tools within them that are used, et cetera. So they can be used for sales, right? They can be used for information sharing, but for us and for our purpose, they're used in a way that fosters collaboration, an inclusive environment, and one that offers value, I think, is what we're trying to do and how we're trying to use them. And in the end, that's really another way how to keep those members engaged, to make it of value. We try and make it fun, informative, interactive, and especially during this time, it's important to give people a voice and a platform to talk about their experiences. So those are really the keys. In terms of how to get started on some of this, basically what we did, and the suggestion is to consider the resources you have at your disposal within your membership and how you may be able to make use of those resources. So Jen mentioned, social media, LinkedIn, and any others. Supply chain is bringing in a younger and younger demographic. The younger demographic is familiar with social media. Many of those may be interested enough to be pulled in and volunteer their time. to build up that social media of your own organization. It's also important to consider perhaps what IT resources you may have available within your membership. Now, IT, you don't need any wizard or anything like that, but it's good to have someone that understands it. And what sorts of contacts those resources may have. So if someone is a supply chain person in your organization, they may know someone else in their own healthcare organization, or if they're a supplier, know someone in there who may have information and is happy to share that about building a website or making the current website better, how to include the sorts of tools that Jen went over. Telecommunications, of course, is another way. It does tie into IT in the presentation format. The healthcare industry is using telehealth, right, during this time, and so they're using it in their own way, and we should consider how we can use it in ours, how supply chain can use it in ours. In terms of having a driver, very, very important, critical really. Is there or can there be a primary driver of events, of hosting the events, of driving the platform and those sorts of things. But one of the most important things, I think, most important parts to getting started is to start small. Don't let the information and the options overwhelm you. Only use really the options that you think are going to be helpful and needed on the platform that you select. So no need to be fancy. Let it evolve as it goes, and learn as you go forward. Like Susan mentioned in her presentation, we are still definitely learning. We made some mistakes, and the really, really important part is that we've learned a lot from those mistakes and made the corrections to make future events better. And I think that's appreciated among our membership. So in terms of the platform that we used, I think Susan mentioned that it is Zoom. But what happened was we got together as a committee, as the education committee, that is, and we went through some of the options that are available to us for education and the networking sessions that we have, the considerations, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, of course, et cetera, all of those types of things. There are many out there. It really was not an in-depth discussion. We didn't do any sort of in-depth analysis of pros and cons. It was really more high level, and it had to do with access and familiarity. So in that vein, we went with Zoom because we found that it was familiar to people, and a few of us had access, and within Zoom, not only access, but access to the options that we needed. So although we selected and used Zoom, it's not an endorsement, not an advertisement, not a suggestion, anything like that. It's just something that works for us. There are many that are just as good that I'm sure would work. So using any meeting platform that has the tools that are needed is great. And part of what we learned is that there is a silver lining around this pandemic. So yeah, I said it. The silver lining that I found is that one of the great things about the situation, it's allowed for many more people to participate in our sessions than I think otherwise would have, or that have historically. We mentioned, I think it was Susan again that mentioned, over 100 people that attended the sessions, which is really, we thought that was really, really impressive. It's a lot easier to attend a session over a meeting platform, less time consuming, not nearly, not nearly as much of a time commitment. So we're in Boston, right? And here in Boston, getting somewhere is really hard. Less so today, but pre-pandemic, it was difficult to get around. And, a commute of just like 10 miles can take an hour or more. So, and that said, don't even get me started on the weather. When you put that factor into it, it became really, really hard for folks to get out to the live sessions that we used to have. So this has allowed many more people to come together and participate. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm very much looking forward to resuming a little normalcy and being able to stand next to someone. But I do think that these platforms have a lot to offer in terms of supplementing our events that we would not really have otherwise considered. So it's opened our eyes to considering how and if we should continue using this even after the pandemic. I mean, we had an event on the pandemic from the supplier and provider perspective. In our live events, speakers and attendees, they had to be local. With these latest ones, with these latest events, we have people from different parts of the country speak, and 3M is a good example. 3M was a supplier that was in demand during this time, and they participated in the perspective on their perspective on the pandemic. They were happy to participate. The audience was happy to have them. So there are things that worked well, and those are the types of things that also contributed to keeping members engaged. So for the Zoom evolution, it was that I had to learn about the options that it had, and I did that by talking with people who knew about the options. That included my telecom department. I searched the internet and really, just clicking around and exploring what the application had to offer, and then going back to the internet and understanding what those different options really meant. I also had to learn which controls I personally had access to. Different people have different levels that they're going to have access to, different accounts that would be on the same platform. But luckily, I had many options and many controls. So that is another reason why Zoom worked for us. My account allowed up to 500 participants to be on a webinar. So after learning the options, I reached out to people to learn how to control a webinar, and then learned some things just by, like I said, taking time to click around. My understanding evolved from there. So, for example, I learned to run a smooth webinar. I made sure that all speakers were muted if it wasn't their turn to speak. I made sure that the speaker view was on so that they were, whoever it was that was speaking was highlighted. I made sure that others, that their video was not engaged, so that, again, only the speaker's video was engaged. Made sure that we transitioned smoothly from one speaker to the next. I also watched out for questions and the chat sessions, just like we're doing here, and tried to make sure as best that I could that the speaker was made aware of the question ahead of time so that they had time to consider the answers to that question. I also enabled something that's called practice mode, like a practice session, and that gave us time to give the panelists instructions and review how things were going to flow before I opened it up to the rest of the audience. So moving on to the meeting controls. So in terms of those, in terms of the meeting controls and which to use and setting that up, it really depends on the type of event and how we want it to go. We typically set up a panel discussion as a webinar, and I have the audience, again, muted, no cameras. I also go from panelist to panelist and, again, work the speaker view and move that along. Videos, again, are turned off. And we do have other options. We can allow the audience members to speak if they have a question and use those sorts of things. It's important to keep the panelists comfortable, I think. So especially in these kinds of times where the presenter may be a supplier, and there may be many audience members who were not happy with the level of service of that supplier or their reaction to the pandemic. So we go through those questions that are submitted to make sure they're valid and applicable, and try and get them to the panelists ahead of time. For a webinar, I talked about the practice sessions that we usually enable. We also typically record the sessions, and like Jen said, make them available. It's important to mention that as a host of these types of events, that a large amount of it is active listening. So I employ that while presenters are talking. I try and listen very actively. I take notes when I can, because if questions or follow-up is not high after the presentation, I try and step in, give feedback to the presenter on what I heard and how it relates to my own work, my own organization, or I may have a question or two of my own for them. And that usually engages the rest of the audience to be more vocal, and they're prompted to ask their own questions or otherwise engage with their own thoughts. That really makes the event more collaborative if needed. And that collaboration goes back to value, right? Which I think goes back to promoting engagement. So there's a lot of thought and strategy to something that may appear to be fluid and naturally involving, but really there's strategy and a lot of planning behind it. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So as mentioned, the reason for Zoom in particular was access, availability, familiarity. Talked about the typical controls for a webinar when we have a panelist or presentation type event. But for a different event like the happy hour that was mentioned, or a networking session, we do things differently. We don't employ the webinar because the point of those is to encourage interaction. So, of course, we leave it kind of much more wide open. We don't mute people. We do have the ability to mute people if things get out of hand, and just, if it is a happy hour, that's great and fun. And if people are drinking, my suggestion is to turn off recording. That makes people a little bit more engaged. So we try and encourage that type of interaction. We do suggest that people use their cameras when it is a networking session so that we could see each other's faces. There are, of course, limitations to using an online platform. It's not at all the same as the live events we had when we get people together in a room and there are drinks and snacks, and that type of traditional networking is well understood, and really not nearly as much involvement is needed. People just gravitate, to one another and talk. With an online platform, again, you need that subtle leading the conversation, and you need to have conversation starters in your back pocket. Those are important, and they really do work. And so it just goes back to planning these events. We try not to just throw out a networking session. We do try and plan them and discuss what we should start off with. And like Susan had said, we'll typically have one or two person will ask for a volunteer to just talk for a couple minutes, 5 to 10 minutes about some things. They're typically definitely much more light than a webinar, than a panel discussion, but we do still try and have conversation starters to have in case the event starts to get kind of stale. So one of the takeaways from this has been to have some topics available to keep that conversation moving. And the strategy for a good networking session via that online platform is to have some of those important topics to keep things moving. So that's what I meant by you have to kind of work the room and keep that conversation going. Others aren't really aware, and it seems organic that it evolves, but it really is planned to be fun, upbeat, flowing, and relevant. So it's important to work the room and employ strategy when you're planning these sorts of things. So I'm going to now turn it back over to Craig to wrap things up.
And thank you, Gennady. Great job. And thank you, Susan and Jen, for your offering during this presentation. Very, very, very good job. Thank you very much, team. And I just wanted to go through a few, if we can move to the next tab, next slide, I should say, some of the lessons learned. which was important. And Gennady touched on those, Susan, as well as Jen, touched on those throughout the presentation, and I will echo many of those items. But I think it's important to know the learning, and Gennady mentioned this a moment ago, and I think this is important, that we try to keep it fun, really organic as well. I think as we met as a team, as a subcommittee, to think about what we were going to do in terms of offering, what mode of communication we were going to use, how to use the technology. We didn't really have a master plan in terms of what the outcomes would be. We knew we wanted to present some material to our members. We knew we wanted to connect. It was important that we connected during the height of the corona pandemic here in Massachusetts, and I'm sure throughout the country, connecting and seeing individuals, I think was very important, and not being or not having that readily available was a challenge. So again, the learning organic, the expectations, again, we weren't looking to create masterpieces here. We ultimately wanted to connect. We wanted to see the individuals that we see in our work relationships, our vendor relationships, manufacturer relationships. So, trying different things was all on the table. Looking at every opportunity was all on the table. We wanted to ensure that everything that was being offered, suggested, ideas was on the table without any encumbrances. So I think that's important to know as we move forward, and as any of you go forward in terms of putting on or utilizing the information that we provided today. Just allow it to be organic, allow your group to be creative, and be without any encumbrances in terms of putting forward a product to your membership. I think what's very important as well, the right people performing and completing the right tasks. Susan being our subcommittee chair for the education, the right person and the right task. Gennady leading our technology component, the right person doing the right task. Jen leading our communication component, the right person performing the right task. That's I think a strong mechanism for success. I'm just window dressing. Those are the people I just mentioned are the real people who did the work. And again, I commend those individuals. But just a couple of bullets that I wanted to just touch on in terms of lessons learned. So stay close to the invite and watch for rogue emails around the event. Very, very important. And Jen touched on this. You could send out a year's worth of invites for meetings each month and determine at some point in time throughout that year that your link to the Zoom may have changed, or you may have changed the platform for your delivery. So one of the things that we've learned is you may want to stay close to sending out emails and notices 3 to 4 weeks or even sooner out to your membership, as well as when these emails are sent out to the members, sometimes those emails are forwarded on to additional folks within others' work environment, institution. So your event could balloon in some cases because your email could be forwarded to a number of different folks. We had that challenge with 3M, where we sent the notice out to our 3M presentation speaker, and he forwarded on to maybe 10 to 15 of his colleagues. So those are the things we've learned, which is okay, but those things you just need to be aware of. Just a quick point, another one, need a technology driver to manage the event. Very, very, very important. That individual who is controlling the technology controls the board. They control who talks, when they talk, the volume of that presentation, how crisp that presentation and the delivery of that presentation on the platform will be. That person is of the utmost importance. Controlling any white noise, background noise. So be aware of that. The technology driver is of the utmost importance because they control all the sound and the noise. I would also say, and I'll take a step back real quick, crisp communications are important to our members. All our members are professionals who have day jobs, are working, so they don't want to get inundated with emails, return emails, or junk email. So the website manager, which Jen is doing a fantastic job, awesome job around, is the single point of contact. So everyone isn't copied on everyone's email that goes out. She receives all the emails back. She receives all inquiries, all questions, all comments back to one point of contact. And we trust Jen's judgment to respond accordingly to whatever those comments and questions are. And then sort of segueing into that website manager, and Jen took us through that wild apricot, which has changed our lives in NESHMM in terms of how efficiently and functionally that we are able to communicate and get information out to our membership in terms of sending those invites, rescheduling invites, uploading documents and surveys. That right there is, again, of the utmost importance. What we get out, not inundating our membership, but sending out crisp communication in a timely manner so that they get the notification, the registration, what have you, then a reminder, something that's crisp, short, to the point, about the dates, the links, and what they'll be receiving in terms of the education. So that type of detail is very, 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 very important. And then one of the things that we learned, and these are just a couple of things that I just wanted to touch on, is how the attendance approved. And Gennady talked to this and went into this, in which we, again, from an organic perspective, we weren't really sure what we were going to get. Only thing we did know is we wanted to connect and we wanted to share our lessons learned. We wanted to share what we were going throughout our facilities, whether it was a healthcare facility or whether it was a supplier dealing with those healthcare facilities. And we learned that, again, due to weather, time constraints. I can remember during the height of COVID, I was working 7 days a week. So there was no way for me to get out and go anywhere, not to mention the legal and regulatory encumbrances that were set here in Massachusetts. So what we did realize is that our attendance for these events, again, which we would normally typically get 30, 50 for education events or maybe an annual networking event, were what they were. We were getting double that number, which was great for us. And that only motivated the team and our organization to do more and to become a little better at what we were doing. Again, at one point, I think we had 190 for our first education event, and then we circled back for our first networking event. We had about another 190 or so attendees. So that type of feedback, that type of hunger, and I have to believe just a little bit, people wanted to sort of a respite away from what was going on in their facilities and to be able to hear what was going on in other facilities and what they could do and where they could buy from and what vendors were providing, PPE. So I think the timing is no accident that we were successful in that, in our endeavor to move forward virtually. But I think also what is truly accented that was the production around this, the people who were able to bring these things together. And I'd just like to just sort of lastly say, and I'll open this up for questions, here. That so the virtual education and networking happy hour sessions, for at least the short term, have replaced those face-to-face opportunities with manufacturers and distributors. And now we communicate, over Zoom, over WebEx, or webinar. And we give TED Talks over these platforms and these mediums. We share lessons learned over these mediums. We develop and have happy hour and network discussions over this or these technological mediums, or social mediums, I should say. And these tools have helped us stay connected. And the success of the NESHMM team, to simulate this sense of normalcy with our membership has been just, again, organically just amazing. The planning, the steering, the teamwork to deliver these types of activities as a result of our Education Committee's commitment to sharing and providing important and essential information goes without question, is, again, me being the president is one of my biggest senses of accomplishment to be a part of this team. And kudos to you all. With that, I will open this up to the larger audience for any questions, comments, and concerns. If you do have a question, please address it to me. If you're looking for specific information in terms of the technology or the web manager or the how we got here, I can toss it to my team members for follow-up. And at that point, I'll take any questions. So I see there's some items coming up on the chat, and one of the questions here is from the Chicago Metro chapter. We've always had an annual golf outing, but over the last year, attendance has started to decline. Low attendance from our younger members. Any ideas for another activity which may appeal to younger members? That's a great question. We are doing some things currently, and Susan, I'll let you touch this, because this sort of falls in line with some of the conversations that we've had with Mitch in terms of credits, CU or CE or continuing education credits, partnering with and working with a local collegiate facility, if that's possible. So can you touch on that a little bit, Susan? Because that's one of the things that we talk about, is how we connect with the new MM folks or newer suppliers or the younger audience, a group of people.
Yes, Craig, I'm happy to do that. I was mentioning to the team, just noticing at the last few events we had in person, is how many more new faces we're seeing. The younger folks are entering supply chain. I know less people at these events, but like I said, I've been doing this close to 35 years. And, my question to the team was, how can we get engagement, continued engagement from these members? And, I've been thinking and hearing about, I think some of you other chapters offer like certificate programs for buyers in particular. I'll just say buyers. That's kind of where I was going, because I think a lot of young people enter the field in maybe an entry-level purchasing role. So we started talking with our contact at Stonehill College to see if we can't put together a certificate program for these younger folks entering the supply chain field. So we're going to we've started talking about it. Stonehill is interested. They're actually interested in more than a certificate program, but we are going to start discussions with them for something we can put together and roll out for next year. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, Craig. It's Kimberly. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I apologize. I was having some technical difficulties. We do have some questions in the Q&A, so I'll just I'll ask that aloud to you, and then if you can throw it to whoever needs to answer that question. First question is, does Wild Apricot require a member's login and password to access content? And then a follow-up to that from the same person, it's Lori Canover of the Kansas chapter. Wild Apricot looks like a comprehensive tool that would benefit all chapters. Actually, I can field this question. If you could answer the first question, does Wild Apricot require a member's login and password to access content?
It does. I can let Jen elaborate just a bit on that, but it does.
Okay.
Hi.
And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Do you want me to answer the question?
Go right ahead.
Oh, okay, cool. So for member logins, yes. So what we did is, so for example, if someone wants to renew their membership or they want to access an online portal, they do have their own portal. We all have our own, each administrator also has their own login as well, so we can all kind of go in and make any tweaks. But yeah, so each member does have a login to answer that question.
Perfect, thank you. Chuck Jensen has a question. I'm wondering about this tool for events. Is there a cost? How much does it cost the chapter? I'm assuming he's referring also to Wild Apricot.
You want to tackle that, Jen?
Sure. Yes, so Jason, I think he added a link to the pricing for Wild Apricot. It's based off of how many members you have. So the more members, it's going to be, more expensive, but I mean, that's the price list right there. And what was the other question with that?
It was follow-up, like how much does it cost the chapter? So it's just based on the amount of members.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Let's see. So Chuck also has a question. Recording, I am told, is illegal in some cases. How have you addressed that?
Could you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
Recording, I am told, is illegal in some cases. How have you addressed that?
And you said recording. So in terms of, are you referencing when we have a presenter who's presenting material to our membership? Is that where the question is going?
I'm assuming that's his question. Yeah, that's what he's referring to.
When we have a speaker that we land to present 3M or PDI, in these particular cases, we've confirmed with the speaker and the presenter that, and even in some cases, they've even asked us to post. But we inform the presenter that we are recording the event and that we plan to post it on our NESHMM website for our members to go back and look at, or for those who have not or did not have a chance to take a look at it, to go look at it. So we get approval or authorization from the actual presenter that we are interested in posting the video and audio material.
Okay, thank you, Craig. And then Patrick LaPlante has a question. He says, had issues with some attendees using VPNs. This would often in regards to time, slow down, lag communication. Do you have any way to address that as well?
That's a great question, Patrick, and I don't know that guy. No, I do know that guy. Patrick has been very, very influential in helping the NESHMM organization move along. Thanks, Patrick. That's a great question, and that depending on your LAN network, when you're utilizing these tools, these social media tools. I think that it's very important that the network is stable. Again, what we've been able to do in terms of our offering, with Zoom, and again, Gennady, thank you very much, and sort of setting it up on the platform. Boston Children's Network platform must be very, very, very stable because we've not experienced many challenges in the ways of that, at least presenting out. In some cases where individuals may be using cell phone to present back or ask questions back, you could run into challenges and or problems. But most of that networking component depends on the stability of the host person's sort of location. And Gennady, do you want to touch on that a little bit from a technical?
Yeah, I would. Thank you. So it is a good question. There are a couple of things I would say about it. First is that we take that into consideration in a few ways. Of course, the very first one, of course, is to let the presenters know, to make sure to be somewhere that you have a stable network and blah, 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 all that stuff. But we also, like I mentioned, have the presenters log in early, where the audience isn't involved. It's just the panelists. And during that time, we can see if their connection is, we can make sure that their connection works, is strong. But there, and we did that. And I recall, I think it was during the very last event we had, there was one person who had issues with their network or issues using their camera or something like that. They were doing not bad in the practice session, but then when everything was enabled, something went haywire, and when it was their turn to speak, it goes back to working the room, right? The person who has control of the platform needs to be on their toes and really be paying close attention. So when this person's network or whatever it was went down, I recognized it immediately, gave them a few seconds, it wasn't working, and so, just very, very calmly moved on to the next person to give the other presenter time to work out their issues. And luckily they did work out their issues, so what happened was the presentation went on, it just went out of order, but if the person did not recover their network, c'est la vie, you move on and the show goes on. So that's really how we deal with it. It can happen. It's probably going to happen in the winter time often with the snow and everything here.
Okay, great. And I know that Jason Isherwood has a question as well, and since he is one of our panelists, he has unmuted himself. Go ahead, Jason.
To the NESHMM crew, this is awesome. And my question is really around participation. So, Craig, I've been to a lot of your events and great participation, but I'm wondering when you look back and you see how it was and where it is now. I'm when I said wow in the chat about when you said you had like over 100-something people on this virtual event, I'm amazed by that. Are you seeing that is it the same people participating? Are you getting new people now, different people, because the access is maybe a little bit easier because you alluded to the driving and the weather in Boston? And do you see, so that's like the first question, are you seeing a difference in participation? And then the follow-up to that would be, is how do you see that like going forward? I mean, as we eventually come out of this into something else, do you see yourselves, and we can be back together again, but do you see you guys as an organization potentially still mixing it up and saying, well, we might do some virtual events and some in-person? Like, what does that look like for you all?
So great questions, Jason, and this has been brought up. We just had our annual board meeting about a week ago. We talked a little bit about this. But so one, to answer your question, in terms of members, again, we had over 190 members, and Wild Apricot is very, very influential in helping us determine who's registering, because you have to provide some information. Jen can see where that's coming from, who that's coming from. So, and Susan talked a little bit about that too, with some of the new faces that she will see or see who's going out there, see who's coming into the presentation. Absolutely, we still have some of our core members who come to every event, who participate in every event. that we are also getting. But to your point, trying to bring those new faces and those new members in to show them that there's something being offered here. I mean, 190 registrants, and we kept, I think, throughout the entire education session, 190. There were definitely a lot of new faces there, and so that for us obviously important, and capturing who that is important so that we keep them engaged. Obviously, we want to keep them as a member, and when it comes time for dues, things of that nature. But that is being done, and we sort of center on that, utilizing the tools that we have. And then your second question, could you just touch on that again? What was it?
And so, like, how do you see yourself as you move forward?
Yes.
Like, do you see it being maybe a mix? Because, obviously membership and retention is a huge issue with most chapters, and getting people to come there. And I think this pandemic has forced us into something different that I don't think we ever would have done. I'm a chapter leader as well as doing the committee chair for this committee. So
right. Yep.
I'm interested in what your thoughts are on the future.
That's a great question, Jason, because, we've stumbled onto something that works for our constituents. I believe we'll go forward with a hybrid approach. One of the things I've noticed, again, and I've been a NESHMM member now about 5, going on my 6 years since I've moved to the New England area. And one of the things I will say that the folks, the people, the relationships, they genuinely like each other. So I know we will continue to have some face-to-face events. Again, our golf event is very, very popular. We get substantial turnout, participation in that. And then our annual dinner, I've had occasion to see you there and to chat with you there. We do a very, very good job with that. So I would believe, though, with the success of this tool, and we have begun to talk about this even prior to the coronavirus, that we need to do some virtual stuff to limit some of the travel, maybe during the year, maybe at some point in time we could add an additional session, education session or offering to coincide with the actual physical location or physical connections that we have when we meet. So I would say it'll be a hybrid approach, because I think, and I still believe that, sort of that face-to-face, the actual touch relationship is important. Especially I know for our MMs to have that with the vendors, the manufacturers out there. So that's very important. That'll play a significant role in us continuing to meet going forward. But I believe it'll be a hybrid approach where we offer some form of virtual offering going forward as well, which, again, in the past years we had not done.
Thank you very much, Craig. Excuse me, there is one last question, and it's actually directed toward AHRMM, so I will field that question. It is from Lori Canover, and it says, Wild Apricot looks like a comprehensive tool that would benefit all chapters. Would AHRMM consider negotiating an agreement on behalf of all chapters so that all can use this product? I can definitely look into that, whether it be through AHRMM or the American Hospital Association's IT department. I'm not sure if it's something that we've done in the past or they will allow for the future. It doesn't hurt to ask. So I will definitely look into that for our chapters and see if it's doable. So I have it on my to-do list already. So thank you for asking that question. And I will let you all know if that is a possibility. So thank you for asking that.
Kim, I have one more point, and Susan just brought this up, and I'll be 2 seconds. What I think is very important.
We have 1 minute left, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Yep, and that is when you put these virtual meetings on, leave time for Q&A. We had to learn that as well. So what we're doing here is great for this back and forth. So that's one of the lessons that we learned. Leave time for your Q&A at the end of the session.
Okay, perfect. All right, so with that said, thank you all so much. Thank you to NESHMM for presenting on this very valid and very time-sensitive topic. So, and thank you to everybody that attended. We really appreciate it. And with that being said, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.